Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today's video is about adjusting the frequency module on your Estes WE2012 or Syma S031, being that they are the exact and same precise helicopter. Just that Estes rebranded it, and to get your parts, you need to go through places that sell Syma parts. One of the places I deal with is called Fella RC. Anyways, for adjusting this, you're going to find a little module. You see the tip of my screwdriver is right on it. It's going to look like this. And it could be located here, could be up here, could be back over here. It just depends on the revision of the board that you have on your Estes WE2012 or your Syma S031. This also applies to a lot of other helicopters that have these little boards in them with the little adjusters. And of course, you're only going to be able to adjust these with a very fine tip bladed screwdriver. And there's some wax coating on here that is to prevent slippage of the screw inside that runs up and down the shaft to change your frequency. So you're going to have to very carefully go in and just lightly touch the wax and just go back and forth like this until you get down, and you'll have a stopping point on either side, and you know you've come to that limit, and now you're ready to adjust. Now, to adjust this, and you've got a long screwdriver, you're on your own. You're going to have to decide clockwise or counterclockwise for that starting point, and just a little tiny micro movement is all you need, just a tiny one, because the frequencies are so precise. You gotta kind of get it really nice and dead on, right? And you would think that they would be properly adjusted from the factory, but I found many of these things where they were not. And I've been able to readjust some of them, and some of them there was no adjusting them, so it was just a defective board, period, and I've replaced the board. Before I even go into these boards to mess with them, I check the battery to make sure it's not the battery that's the issue, so I check the balance of the cells. So a lipo tester is real handy to be able to count the cells to see what voltage is in each one when the battery is fully charged. You should have 4.2 volts per cell. It's not uncommon to see 4.22 on one, 4.21 on one, or 4.2 on one, 4.21 or 22 on one. It's kind of a, okay, but you shouldn't have below 4.2 volts per cell, because then you may have a memory buildup happening with the battery, which means a couple of drain cycles. Now, brand spanking new, the most common mistake people make, and it's not usually their fault because the instructions don't always tell you, not always, depends on the product and who's selling it, whether or not they give you the right instructions. But what you need to do first is one of two things. You can top up the battery, fly the thing, and cycle it a few times, and the battery holds full capacity. Another way to do this is there's always a charge in these things from the factory. So another way to do this, to condition the battery, is to not charge it first, get it running out of the box, throw it in idle mode so that it's not flying, and run that battery down until it pukes, okay? And your LED lights will still be running when it pukes out. And then you can charge cycle that 3 times, and the battery holds full capacity. So, and then this takes away all the problems of battery issues right away. But you also need the lipo checker to check the balance of the cells to make sure you don't have a bad battery. Second thing I do is, if I find out I do have a good battery and I'm having stalls and farts, I check the motor temperature with my finger. And it's kind of hard to get at this back one, but you can lift the little plate out of the way, jam your baby finger in there, and the front one's pretty accessible. And if you have one motor running hotter than the other, that could also be the culprit. Okay, that can happen right out of the box. Everything man-made is not perfect, okay? But it's rare that you're going to find a motor issue. It's very rare you're going to have a battery issue. But you need to check these things anyways. And if these things all pass, now you want to check out your board. And these frequency modules are located in different places depending on the revision of the board. This one just has to be located here. I've also seen them up here, I've seen them here, I've seen them over here. Okay, so they're gonna have a location somewhere. Now, if you have a short stubby like this, which is part of a hex driver kit, and it's a jeweler's blade, very, very fine one, then you can do this with the motor running. Just be aware, my little disclaimer, your own risk. If you're an idiot and you get hit by your blades, don't blame me. It's your fault, you screwed up. Because when I do this, I do it with this little guy, and I usually have my wife to help me, and she will walk backwards with the remote until it cuts out, then she stops, then of course I can make that adjustment. So I have to actually have some electrical tape on this so that my fingers and my body don't interfere with the electrical circuits, so you're going to have to put some tape on this. Even heat shrink tubing works, okay? And you're going to have to be kind of like this with a balancing act while these blades are running, and only have it idled up enough that the blades run, okay? And you got to be very careful of the angle of your arm so that the blade can't run into your arm, okay? Because otherwise that's going to really smart, trust me. And so you don't need the blades running very fast in order to find out when they start to fart out on you, okay? So anyway, the other thing is your radio batteries. Make sure you use good quality radio batteries. Don't use junky AA batteries in your radio equipment. Use Energizers, Duracells, something that's a good quality battery and strong battery, and change your batteries, you know, maybe, I don't know, every 50 flights would be a good thing, okay? Because bad batteries too can cause the problem. Now with AA batteries, they can be tested with any regular multimeter. Set it on the 1.5 volt setting, or 5 volt setting, depending on what your meter is registered at for DC volts, and check the batteries and make sure they're all at least 1.5 volts or higher. And a regular AA battery is usually about 1.6 volts, right? Around that area. So you want to make sure your batteries are good in your radio, because that can cause interference problems too, where you can cut in and out. Because as your radio is transmitting, it's drawing at those batteries to transmit. It's got to talk to the helicopter. The further away you get, of course, your radio still has to keep communication going. And if you don't have enough battery strength to keep transmitting that distance, well, guess what? You're going to have stalls and farts too. So before you even go after this board at all, make sure you've eliminated every other possibility that could be a problem. Then you go to this board and you can adjust it on the fly with a short little stubby hex adapter like this, because it's going to miss, right? And you can adjust that while the other person is walking backwards. And when the blades stop, they need to be stopped, so you have to tell them in advance, hey, so having an FRS might be handy, especially if you're already 100 feet away. The most range on average you're going to expect out of this thing is probably between 150 to 200 feet away. Even though they rate these things for 300 feet, some companies that sell them rate them for 200 feet or 150 feet. So I would say a good controllable average is around 150 to 200 feet, okay? Now, as far as the, going up in height with these are coaxial helicopters too, don't forget. So you got to fly them up in the higher altitudes on like a zero wind day, really, to be realistic. But they can handle anywhere from about 9 to 11 kilometers an hour with the present tail blades that come with these things, just so you know what I'm talking about here. Alright, this is what I like to call a canoe paddle blade. It's only good for extreme low wind conditions. Now, if you watch my other videos, check them out. I have an upgraded blade that I use from the SO33 helicopter on these machines, and it works rather well for being able to fly in higher wind situations, but you're only going to have a certain amount of limit to that too. Anyway, so that's an improvement there. But check everything else out first before you start attacking this, because this may not be your problem. And if everything else passes and you're adjusting this and you still can't get it dialed in right, then you probably do have a bad board right from the factory, and that can happen. I've seen it happen a few times, and I've seen it where a lot of the times I can just adjust this counter because everything else passed, right? And I've been able to resync it properly. It's just that this stuff's all mass produced, and you know, they tend to, you know, just set and go, and oh, there's where it should be for this board, and they set them all the same, and then next thing you know, you get a pile of defects. Why? I wonder. They should be setting each and every individual one on a frequency counter properly, and I don't really think that's going on. So you may have to make some adjustments, and that's just the way things happen to go in life with mass producing products. So that's the adjustments. Now you can start out going counterclockwise or clockwise, but don't let that screw bottom out, because it's not to bottom out, and you're not to see the screw itself protruding out the top of the base. Okay, it's going to be an in-between area, and it's a very, very fine adjustment. It's very precise, so you got to be very careful. So if the person is already, say, 100 feet away, you're cutting out, and then you make your little adjustment. Okay, they got to stay on the throttle, right? And you make your little adjustment, and as soon as it comes back on, get them to walk a little further away. And see if you can get 150 feet out of it. See if you can get 200 feet. I would be happy myself, to be honest, with between 150 to 175. That would be just wonderbar, okay? And if you can get it dialed in that close, leave it there, because that's more than acceptable. Especially when we're talking a coaxial machine on the megahertz band, okay? And another thing is, other things can cause interference with your megahertz band radio equipment. For example, we live in an age where we have cell phones, we have CB radios, we have ham radio system, marine, we got COPS, we got, you know, all these different radio systems, and the frequencies are just floating freely everywhere in the air at every single point in ground level of the planet. So other things can interfere, and that's why you need to dial it in as best as you can, right? And the megahertz scale being such an old scale to be used in RC, and it still is in a lot of cases, the more stuff we have out there and swamping frequencies, the harder it is for these old school type frequencies to fight through all those other frequencies to still be very well and usable, okay? So that's the other thing, and that's just the way things go. So, but you shouldn't have any problems. If everything's fine, you should not have any problems getting 150 to 200 feet even. But like I said, 150 feet is great and acceptable. And keep in mind, this is a coaxial machine, so they don't like wind very much. You know, and so if you're going to fly coaxial helicopters, they're the best thing to start learning on of any helicopter, in my opinion, because it gives you the ability to go forward and backward, do turning, you know, for left and right stuff. It gives you the skills to get started. So then you can go into the 4-channel stuff, you know, learn the 4-channel in the helicopters. And if you want to fly quadcopters, well, all quadcopters are 4-channel, you know, and so you're going to learn 4-channel flying on quads, and that's where you're going to find a difference between 4-channel helis and 4-channel quads compared to a 3-channel helicopter. Is your steering, instead of being on the right stick for your pirouette, is now on the left stick, okay? So that's going to be a little bit of an alteration to learn when you go to 4-channel systems. But and I thought I'd throw that in as a little extra information, just so that you're aware of what's really going on out there with this RC stuff. And there's nothing wrong with 3-channel machines. I still like flying them once in a while because they're kind of fun. Anyways, so hopefully that answers everybody's questions. So, but if you have more, let me know. I know these machines inside and out. I've worked on, well, too many to count. You know, in different ways of between modifying them, swapping parts. I've done hop-ups with the motors before, that sort of thing. And so I know these machines really, really well. But that's what I can give you for troubleshooting. Get rid of all that stuff first before you start attacking this board. And if you are going to go in with the little short hex thing, if you clip yourself, that's your problem, not mine. Okay, I do it my way. You should be actually doing it the more safer way, and just adjust it first a little bit, and then do your walk, and then see how things go. But it is actually a lot easier to go in with that little screwdriver and have somebody else help you, and then you can adjust it on the fly. You just got to make sure that you don't have your motor speed too high, that your helicopter can start to take off on you. Okay, so that's a very important thing. So when the person first starts to help you out, fire up the helicopter, then they start walking backwards with it. And try and keep your line of sight as direct as possible in line, with no interference, like, you know, no trees in the way, no buildings in the way, you know, and do it that way and get it adjusted up, and you're going to be fine. But like I said, do all those other things first before you mess, because it may not be this. It could be your radio batteries. It could be a bad motor. It could be a bad helicopter battery. Okay, so check out all those things before you start monkeying inside this board. That's the last thing you should be checking over and messing with. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Check you on the next video. And like I said, questions, comments, feel free, you know, and we'll see you in the next one.